Welcome to the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. I want you to do me a big favor before you check out this clip. I want you to hit the like button. I want you to throw in a comment and make sure you're a subscriber to this channel. And then I want you to share this video with your friends. Help us defeat the algorithm. And then if you like this content and you appreciate this content, please head over to patreon.com/the Mike and JD Show and support the show. That is how we actually get funded to be able to do this. So we thank you very much for being here. And now enjoy the clip. Yeah, New Japan's not looking too good. Some MMA news. We never talk MMA, but I thought this was interesting.
Sure.
The UFC settled their lawsuit with I think like 1,100 different fighters from 2010 to 2024. I think was the closeout date of the lawsuit. Each fighter is going to get on average, so it's going to fluctuate. But they said 186,000 because the lawsuit was 335 million, which was well short of what people thought they were going to get. They thought they were going to get, upwards, to 1.6 billion, I think was the top point. So, TKO was able to, settle for a lot less, but, this is crazy. So basically the crux of the lawsuit was a lot of just contractual stuff and anti-competitive behavior, which is exactly what we see in pro wrestling as well. So, and in WWE, and that was part of the MLW lawsuit, was the anti-competitive behavior. But with the MMA fighters specifically, they were, suing because UFC was buying up promotions. They bought up Strikeforce, they bought up Pride, they bought WEC. The contracts were way too long, and then when people left the company, they weren't able to take their titles with them because it's UFC property. So they were trying to get MMA to be more of a boxing model, have 1 year or less contracts and things like that. But none of that is going to happen, but they did get a little bit of money for it.
The 51st, I think they said on Dave's show, was the 51st highest grossing settlement, antitrust settlement in U.S. law history. So it's not like they got nothing, but they definitely didn't get what I think prognosticators expected them to get.
Yeah.
Like, it was within UFC's best interest to settle this as quickly as possible. I'm just surprised that they settled for the number that they did. It's disappointing, but I can't say terribly surprising. Like, we love letting big companies rule over us in this company. And what's sad about MMA is, like, it's so hard on the body physically, and when you're done, you're just kind of put out to pasture. And there's like, it's not as like in wrestling, people love nostalgia in wrestling. MMA is not like that. There's not a big market for MMA nostalgia,
So I've been to some like fan fests for the UFC, and you would see some of the old like fighters walking around and stuff and doing like autograph signings, but it's not as big as it is in pro wrestling, because pro wrestling fan fests are like comic book like level, right? Like Comic-Con, like a WrestleCon is pretty big. And the MMA fighters that actually do pretty good at like Comic-Con style events are the ones that have actually ventured over and done pro wrestling too, right? Like they actually get a whole new audience. So Filthy Tom, is like a great example. He made his way over into pro wrestling. He's pro wrestling full time, and he can kind of live on both like careers. And I think he's seemingly doing pretty well for himself. He never really made it to the big leagues yet, but doing pretty good. Not that New Japan's not big, but New Japan of America is not exactly the big leagues. They're not really doing crazy money unless they bring in Moxley. So that's when they do like the bigger houses and stuff like that. So, and he's doing like MLW stuff. But yeah, a lot of people saying they're disappointed, but when I saw that number, I was like, wow, that's a big number. Then I realized how many people were attached to that lawsuit. I was like, okay, well, that gets a little bit smaller, but still,
it's kind of peanuts.
$180,000 is nothing to really sniff at. It's not going to get, you're not going to be able to live your whole life for that, but I don't think they were ever going to get that, unfortunately. So at least they got a little bit of something.
I mean, a little bit of something, like that's like a decent year's worth of work, right? It's a good year's worth of work, $118,000, but it's not like it's nothing for that company, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
in the bucket.
Yeah, it is, and that's what's sad. Is like there's just no. And the sad part about something is, like pro wrestling, if you don't want to do it, someone else will step up and do it for you, which is why it's such a hard way to find like a union. You're never gonna have a union in an individual sport, right? There's just, they don't have that team concept, right? And it's like, unlike boxing, which the mechanics of which were framed in this country more than a century ago, the fighters have always had the power in boxing. In MMA, they very quickly adapted the pro wrestling model rather than the pro boxing model. So I mean, like it's both interesting and sad because it's so hard on the body, and they chew. The UFC chews people up and spits them out, and like you forget these
Mhm.
names that go in there. Like people that go CM Punk when he fought in MMA, he was losing to real fighters. Like, was he? Like the Sage Northcott isn't anything right now, like, and that's the thing is like that guy was supposed to be something, and then he wasn't something, and he disappears. Like it's so there's just not a lot of protections for those guys.
He never fought Sage Northcutt.
I thought he did fight Sergio Northcott. Who did
No,
he
he
fight?
fought Mickey Gall, and he
Mickey
fought,
Gall. I got that
and then
confused.
he
My
fought
mistake.
who was a legitimate fighter. He actually he ended up getting a couple wins in the UFC after that, but then he flamed out pretty quick.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
he,
That's
he
what I
never
mean.
became like a ranked fighter.
But that's what I'm saying. And then he's gone, right? So he
Yeah.
has a couple things. He was supposed to be a guy, then he's not a guy.
Yeah.
Right? My mistake on that. So like, but that's just the thing is like there are no even for the guys that fight for a long time, right? There's just nothing for them when it's done. Like there's no like union setup. There's no protections for these guys who, who like look at Mark Ullman. Like we talked
Mhm.
about that a couple weeks ago. Like that guy should be like sainted and like and be taken care of for the rest of his life. Is he? You know what I'm saying? Like this is like
No,
it's
because
sad.
it's not like in pro football, and the pro
No.
football union really had to fight hard to get the players that played, like they have to meet a certain threshold of games,
Mhm.
and then or years in the league. I can't remember if it's games or years in the league, but once they get to that threshold, they're like taken care of.
Right.
Not as well as they should, but they're still taken care of better than what they were before, and they're still fighting hard for it.
Better
But
than
in
nothing.
pro wrestling and in MMA, there's nothing.
No, I mean, like that's what people get mad about Tony. Like, I heard someone bitching about Jake the Snake getting re-signed by Tony
Oh
Khan.
my gosh.
Well, he doesn't. Well, I mean, like part of me is like, I think Tony just likes to take care of some of the older guys.
Yes.
And
That's
there's
what it
nothing
is.
like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. Like
No,
those guys don't.
it's not your money, motherfuckers.
Right, but that's the thing is like those guys. No one else is looking out for those guys. I mean, at least somebody throw them a couple bucks. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm a fan of that. Like, we need more of that in the world. I don't know, man.
WWE does it too with their Legends deals.
A little bit.
They got a lot of people on Legends deals. They're doing merch deals and toy deals, and they bring them to to their fan fests. And like Lex Luger is going to be like WrestleMania, like fan fests and stuff like that, and selling toys and stuff. They do all that stuff, and they bring them into their video games. Like WWE has a similar system. AEW just hadn't been around that long.
Mhm.
They just really like Jake. Yeah, he's not on the shows, but it's not hurting you. It's not hurting you, right? For Tony to pay Jake money. I think it's a good thing. It's a nice thing to do. Right.
And I think we need more of that. Like we need to do more to protect these older guys that sacrifice their bodies and their brains for the stuff that we love. And I'd like to see MMA adopt something. I remember when it was Chuck Liddell and was it Forrest Griffin had contracts for life?
Chuck Liddell, Forrest Griffin, and Matt Hughes.
Hughes.
They had lifetime jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Chuck Liddell and Matt Hughes weren't actually going to work. And so Dana was just paying them because they helped build the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Forrest Griffin was actually he was actually showing up to the office every day. He had like a real job. He was executing it. And so whenever they sold the company to Endeavor, and they did they looked at all the people that they were paying, like Liddell and Hughes were on the chopping block because they were just getting paychecks because they were Liddell and Hughes, but they saw that like Forrest Griffin was actually like a worker. He was actually coming to work. But he was a guy that had like a real ass job before he joined MMA. He was a
different guy. Yeah.
He joined the Ultimate Fighter. I think he was like not a cop, but I think like a corrections officer or something like that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like those are dudes that, like you said, built a company. Like they were the building blocks when that company needed a building block. And like for them just to be kicked to the curb by a piece of shit like Ari Emanuel is just like it breaks my heart a little bit, especially because Chuck Liddell ain't all there, man. Like I mean,
and Matt Hughes got hit by a fucking train. Yeah.
Like I mean, stuff like that breaks my heart. Like that.
Yeah.
That like there is no loyalty, and that's a place that like I give Dana some respect in that regard because at least he knew who the guys were that helped build his company, and like, but again, they don't care, and I can't help but wonder what these Legends deals will be with TKO running the show because it's the same people, you know.
Yep, the same people that cut those guys, but we haven't seen any difference yet. So, but
that
doesn't mean we won't. That doesn't mean we won't going forward.
It's contracts, but contracts are contracts, and all contract. There are no lifetime contracts. Contracts can be renewed.
Yeah,
you know. So we'll see.
You know, one of the things with the lawsuit is once I think it started in like 2010, and once that happened, the UFC became more willing to like not hold their talent hostage, and they were just like let guys go. like guys that were like still like in their top 10.
Francis
right?
Ngannou.
And then so they let Francis Ngannou go, and they didn't even make him an offer. So they removed his leverage power, but they said just go. And because of what they wanted to do is prove that they didn't have a monopoly over the other promotions. And I kind of noticed a similar thing that happened with WWE and AEW with all the people that they let go, that they cut. They're like, yeah, just go. We're still going to be number one when you get over there. And UFC kind of had the same thing because they're just so far ahead. They're so far ahead of Bellator and PFL. And now Bellator and PFL are the same thing. But same thing happened in pro wrestling. It's just like we're so far ahead, it doesn't really matter. Well, if you want to stay and be a part of the number one promotion, you can. If not, go to Bellator or go to PFL, and you'll make more money, but you're going to be forgotten. And that's basically what's happened to a lot of UFC's fighters. Kind of a sad thing. Thankfully, AEW is a bit more popular than Bellator and PFL. Although I think Bellator always did pretty good at like selling tickets. Like I've been to a Bellator show here, and it was like 5,000-6,000 people here in Hawaii, so they did pretty good
Good
here.
turnout.
But
5,000-6,000 is a good turnout for a show.